This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Nermeen Sheikh in New York.
And I am Amy Goodman in Washington, D.C. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has ordered the termination of all remaining overseas employees of the U.S. Agency of International Development, USAID, or USAID, to complete the dismantling of the 6-decade-old agency. USAID was an early target of Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. Meanwhile, the House voted Thursday to approve President Trump's request to claw back $8.3 billion in previously enacted funding for foreign assistance from USAID and the African Development Foundation. The request seeks to make permanent the cuts to foreign aid already imposed by Elon Musk's DOGE. Oxfam America warns those cuts could cause 23 million children to lose access to education, while up to 95 million people could lose access to basic health care, potentially leading to over 3 million preventable deaths per year. This comes as researchers at Boston University estimate the Trump administration's massive cuts to the U.S. Agency for International Development have already led to some 300,000 deaths. Billionaire Elon Musk called on Trump to shut down USAID earlier this year.
And USAID is a bowl of worms. There is no apple. And when there is no apple, you've just got to basically get rid of the whole thing.
For more on the dismantling of USAID and what it means for people around the world, we're joined now by two guests. In Oslo, Jan Egeland is with us with the Norwegian Refugee Council. He's just returned from a trip to Mozambique. And here in New York, we're joined by Amanda Klasing, National Director of Government Relations and Advocacy with Amnesty International USA, which has just released a report titled Lives at Risk. Chaotic and abrupt cuts to foreign aid put millions of lives at risk. Welcome to Democracy Now! Amanda Klasing, let's begin with you. If you could outline the main findings of your report, the effects of these U.S. aid cuts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to make sure that there's a full accounting of the impact on lives around the world. And in the immediate term, we wanted to give a preview of case studies in 12 countries. What does it look like for there to be such chaotic and in many ways cruel cuts to programs? We looked at programs in Haiti where services for children that have been victims of sexual violence by the gangs, they're not able to access the funding that they were going to provide for, in particular, girls. Or they aren't able to continue the prevention and services for people living with HIV that are LGBT or sex workers that have been displaced by gangs. We also looked in countries like Afghanistan, where internally displaced services for internally displaced people have been cut dramatically, and it's leading to women not having access to safe spaces, people losing jobs, including women, the very few jobs left for them. We looked at Yemen, which is one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world, and looking at the different services for girls and survivors of sexual violence that have been cut and impacted, including, again, safe spaces, psychosocial support. In Myanmar, we looked at the Thai-Burma border. We talked to somebody who actually saw IVs being ripped out of arms when the stop work order came down, and people having to leave hospitals. It's just, there's so much about the big data that is out there and speculation about what this will mean in the long term, but in the short term, the rollout of this policy had devastating impacts already on lives. And Secretary Rubio's defiant testimony that said that lives haven't been lost, it just defies logic.
Well, let's actually talk about exactly what he said, Secretary of State Rubio, and I'd like to get your comment, and also Jan Egeland, whose organization, Norwegian Refugee Council, works with aid groups and populations in need all over the world. Exactly what Rubio said before the House Foreign Affairs Committee, claiming no one has died because of USAID cuts, the cutoff of billions of dollars of U.S. support for global health programs. Another congressional hearing, he said, no children are dying on my watch. Amanda, first you, then Jan Egeland.
Again, it just defies logic. We have the estimates of the people that have been cut off from aid, cut off from life-saving care. We talked to a program in Guatemala. So you have to understand Guatemala has extraordinarily high rates of sexual violence against girls. Over 4,000 girls a year become pregnant and have very little access to abortion services, and so almost all of them carry their pregnancies to term. There was a program that provided safe nutrition and high quality food to these pregnant girls that got cut off. Now, those numbers might not come in right now in front of Secretary Rubio, but certainly the lives of these girls have been impacted. We have individual stories that when you put them all together, you see that it just is at best, it is a lack of faith to the truth. At worst, it's just outright lies.
So, Jan Egeland, how would you characterize what the U.S. Secretary of State said, Marco Rubio, when he said no children are dying on my watch? Give us a global view, and then you just came from Mozambique. Talk about what's happening there.
My organization, Norwegian Refugee Council, works in 40 countries that is stricken by war and disasters. We're a frontline organization. And I must say, I and my frontline humanitarian workers have always been very impressed with USAID, the Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, their work, and the very timely aid they have given us and multiple other organizations that are saving lives. We, in our case, give emergency relief to nearly 10 million displaced people. In northern Mozambique, which is the emergency that the world forgot, hundreds of thousands are fleeing violence from the Islamic State of Mozambique. I mean, Islamic State is defined by the US and other Western countries as a very bad terror organization. On top of that, they had 3 cyclones in the beginning of the year, all climate-induced, climate-driven, and these are very poor people. They did nothing to cause climate change. What they see, however, is that companies from North America and from Europe are pumping gas and oil and taking precious minerals from their soil. So when I then also see that the aid cuts that are going most abruptly from the US, but also other donors. But the US was 60% of humanitarian aid in this region, 60%. And then to go from 60% to 0 means that the water towers in the camp I was had not been filled. This was an infrastructure paid for by American taxpayers, saving lives because clean drinking water is life-saving. It is empty now. The latrines are overflowing. People have to relieve themselves around the camp. It would lead to epidemic disease. Some of it may spread outside of the camp to the nation, to the region, to the world. No, it's not the way to build a railroad to take away the biggest aid program in the world. Overnight, we're working to get other nations to fill these gaps. We get aid from 40 different donor nations and international organizations. But when the biggest one leaves overnight, it really leaves a gaping hole in life-saving aid.
And what about your response, Jan Egeland, to the fact that the Trump administration maintains that life-saving aid is exempt from these cuts? What is happening in practice, though, on the ground?
Well, what is happening in reality is that they have left completely Mozambique. They have left completely Afghanistan. They have left nearly completely the Democratic Republic of Congo, where they were also the largest donor. And what we're then asking is others to step up. But again, I mean, Norway has 5.5 million inhabitants. We pay 5 times more per taxpayer in foreign assistance. 5 times more. It's more than 1% of gross national income goes to foreign aid, 0.2% from the US. So it's an average nation, the US, in terms of what one is giving per taxpayer. And now if US is leaving international solidarity and compassion completely, they will violate every Christian ideal, every humanist ideal, every ideal of every philosophy and religion. I don't think it will happen. U.S. has traditionally been one of the more generous nations when children around the world are starving.
Well, precisely, Jan Egeland, I would like to get both of you to respond to this. The monumental improvements in both child and maternal health as a direct consequence of humanitarian aid delivered by the U.S. over the last 30 years. If you could talk about that, and then Amanda, we'd like to get your response as well.
No, I mean, it's fantastic what the U.S. has achieved. Limiting the spread of AIDS, limiting the spread of epidemic disease, making education there for youth that have left, that had no hope, and get hope. Give one other example as well. I mean, I saw that the US were giving, through the Norwegian Refugee Council, business grants to displaced families. A business grant was $260, not a very large sum, but it led the baker who had fled from Islamic State terror to a camp. He could resume becoming a baker. He has now a business. He sells 300 breads every morning, and he has employed a widow and another very poor family man to work with him. I mean, the U.S. has a lot to be proud of because of its aid. It has traditionally been it's been the leader of humanitarian aid, and it should remain so. We're not giving up hope to see the U.S. again coming back to the ideals that has been there for all Republican and Democratic administrations since the Second World War.
And Amanda Klasing, your response to, in particular, this issue of maternal and child health.
Yeah, absolutely. What's incredible is that the U.S. has also funded the wraparound kind of services and programs that are required to really address the drivers of maternal health. And so there have been programs and safe spaces, programs to address gender-based violence, programs to increase gender equality, programs to increase girls' education, programs to support women leaders and women human rights defenders. All of these programs that aren't necessarily health programs have led to addressing the very stubborn reasons why there continues to be high rates of maternal death in countries around the world, or infant mortality. So increasing all of the quality of life issues and women's rights issues in countries around the world also address maternal mortality. And that, for sure, are the types of programs that there is no interest in returning to. And that is part of why we're so concerned that that's not going to be included.
Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.